Good evening, folks. Tonight's training is Parent Council Money Management with me, Leanne Maguire, Chair of Glasgow City Parents Group, and Catherine Farrow, who is the lead in the Parent Partnership at Education Services. I'll pass straight over to Catherine to get started.
Thank you, Leanne. Delighted to present on this topic because it's one that's very dear to my heart, because I spend a lot of time having conversations with Parent Council about money matters. So what we hope to do tonight is to give you some information that will enable you to run things more efficiently. So I'm going to start off by telling you where your funding comes from and why you're given that funding. So we are told as a local authority that we have to provide funding for parent councils to be able to operate. There should be no cost to anybody on a parent council, and these are really, we are giving you the expenses for members for all the things that need to be paid for. So currently the local authority gives parent councils in Glasgow £400 annually. Parent councils choose to fundraise. Some do that to a greater extent than others, but fundraising isn't the main function of parent councils, but it is something that parent councils can do. Other sources of money, bank interest, maybe a little bit more coming from that now with rising interest rates. And many parent councils are starting to apply for grants rather than asking parents to keep donating at fundraising events, mindful of the cost of the school day. They're going to external bodies to look for funding. If you want to see more on that, our Cost of the School Day webinar has lots of information about where you can apply for grants. So the funding, as I've said, is given to you by the local authority. We have to do that. We can't dictate what you do with it, but it's public funding. So we would intervene if something crazy was happening with that money. So commonly, if you were paying somebody to take minutes, you'd be using that £400 to pay your minute taker. And we suggest there an hourly rate. I can't tell you that's what you have to pay. We advise you, but as I said, we give you the funding, and thereafter it's up to you to decide how you use that funding. But if you were going to pay the Glasgow living wage, you can see that on the screen, and you would only pay an hourly rate for work done, not a flat fee. We've had in the past clerks to parent councils, and before them school boards, getting almost the entire budget. That's not what it's for. If you only have 5 meetings a year, and you would pay the person for those 5 meetings, and if that's 4 hours work, you pay them for 4 hours work. It might be less if your meetings last an hour, bit of prep, bit of work after it to get those minutes out. You look at the amount of work done and pay accordingly. Also, the money is there to provide expenses. If you were coming into headquarters and education, for example, to be on a head teacher interview panel and you had to take a taxi, you don't pay that from your own pocket as a parent council member. You claim that from the parent council from this pot of money. So it's about levelling the playing field, so you can be in a parent council, if you don't have a lot of money, you can be on it doesn't matter. Everybody gets it. It's not, you're not taking money from the children if you don't claim this money. So levelling out the playing field and allowing everybody to participate is the main reason for this. Other costs incurred commonly at the moment, Zoom licenses. So Glasgow City Parents Group, as you will know, have the really fancy version of Zoom, which costs a little bit more than a parent council would have to pay. But the free Zoom cuts out after 40 minutes, and most parent councils can't manage to have a parent council meeting in that time. So you can pay that monthly fee so that you have the extended version of Zoom. So somebody in the parent council would simply pay that. They would produce a receipt in the same way that Leanne gives me a receipt, and Glasgow City Council supports Glasgow City Parents Group by paying for their Zoom license. So Leanne sends me that paperwork, so anybody who's setting that up for their parent council would be able to do the same. So the annual funding it is theoretically paid in line with the financial year at the end of April. It was paid later this year because I was doing a major checking exercise to make sure that parent councils were actually functioning and that nothing had changed in terms of their banking, because parent councils should be alerting us to any changes in banking arrangements, but the reality is that they tend not to. So I emailed out in March asking people to confirm things, and as you might imagine, lots of people didn't respond to that. So we actually took time, because finance don't want us with people coming in saying, I've not had my money in September, again, a few more in October, once they realise they've not had the funding. The finance team asked that we paid everybody all at once, even if it meant delaying. And we did have to delay this year because people wouldn't reply to emails, and we ended up having to make calls. But it's public funding, and I can't keep ploughing money into bank accounts that either nobody can access or they are old accounts that are, with the people long gone, because we found that any money going in there, the bank would ultimately put to good causes. If nobody draws it down. And we found in the past that money was going into accounts that were lying dormant for years. We can't do that. There is just not public money around to do that. So that's why there was a delay in the current financial year. But if we can get people to send us the information, we would be looking to pay that end of April, beginning of May latest. A number of parent councils don't receive funding. I would say that there are very few now, because we did such a robust checking exercise this year, and that most people who should be funded are being funded. If there's no funding, it's because there isn't an active parent council, or the parent council have told us that they are in the process of sorting the bank account out. So we know about them, and we're expecting that they'll get in touch when that has been resolved. Funding might be withheld if the parent council fails to provide a copy of audited accounts. If I request them, it would be me requesting, and that's an exercise that I intend to do at some point this year, just to randomly choose a few parent councils and ask them to send a copy of their audited accounts. Parent council lets need to be now paid. Everybody pays a similar rate. There's information via the link at the bottom of the slide, but there were some places where there were free lets, other schools, parent councils were having to pay for everything. So a lot of this, it was unfair. A lot of this is about levelling out the playing field, and also there is no possibility of free lets without other cuts in education. So the cost of renting rooms in schools, there's a document in that folder that will tell you what it will cost in a primary school and in a secondary school. And we're recommending to parent councils that if they do need to meet at night, it's much cheaper to actually rent a room in the local secondary school than it is to go into a primary school, because if you have to specifically, the secondary schools are open for other purposes, it's a different contract, the janitors are there or the site managers are there. In a primary school, if you have to pay a janitor to come specifically for your parent council meeting, that's going to cost quite a lot of money. So the council just doesn't have money to subsidise this, so it's a level playing field. All lets need to be paid for, and that's what your parent council funding is there to do too. Moving on to a really important role in the parent council, the treasurer. Sometimes two people share this role because individuals can feel quite uneasy managing large sums of money, and they always feel better if they've got somebody else with them. So a shared treasurer role is a really good idea if you can manage to have that. One person can do it fine, and we have some great treasurers who do it on their own. So the role of the treasurer is to keep those accurate financial records, and that's maybe putting it all in a box file or in a folder, keeping receipts, keeping all, in and out payments. Sometimes online banking is used, and that's great because you can then go along to your parent council meeting and actually show, you can log in and show everybody what's in the account. So in that case, you wouldn't have to provide a written financial report and evidence of bank balances at each parent council meeting, because you could simply log on to the account. A verbal report's not enough. So if you're doing it old school, you would share your most up-to-date bank statement, and the treasurer would give a note of any transactions either in or out since that had taken place, and that would be recorded in the minutes of the parent council. So you can't just take everything at face value, and the treasurer would keep you up to date to say, there's £400 in the account, but we've spent, £30 on ink since then, or we've donated 200 to the school, or whatever it is. But there would be receipts for all of that. So if you're giving money to the school, get the school to give you a receipt for the money, just saying received with thanks from the Parent Council, and then it goes into your accounting processes. When it comes to events, you need to be really tight and make sure that you've got proper processes. Check the documents linked to the insurance on the Connect website. Every parent council has got membership of Connect that gives you that membership linked insurance. And there are lots of documents once you've logged on to the Connect site about the proper counting and banking of money, and how much you can store in people's houses, and when you need to get it to the bank. So important to read all of that. You would pay the agreed expenses. So I've said quite a lot about them. Parent council members must claim expenses. Example from a discussion today was a parent council that was printing lots of, one member was printing lots of things at home, another member was laminating using their own laminator. Laminating pouches cost quite a lot of money. They wanted to put signs up with QR codes for how parents could access parent council information. So it was a great thing to do, but I explained to the parent council members that the laminating pouches had to be taken from the parent council pot, and the person who was doing the printing, maybe give them the funding for a cartridge of ink, not every week, but after a period of time where they've done a bit of printing for the group. So that bit about cash flow events, counting it after, making sure that at least 2 people know how much money has been raised and where that money is going, whose house is it going to. So if it's coming to my house and it's going to Leanne's house, we need to know, we need a written record of what's going where. And then once it's banked, we need, the bank would give a receipt for paying that money in. That should then be stored in the parent council records in the box or in the folder. And then at the AGM, it is a legal requirement that there's an annual set of accounts which are shared with all parents and carers in the school, because the Parent Council is operating on behalf of them. Many of them are donating, and those accounts need to be checked by somebody independent to make sure that the receipts and the in-out book and all the various bits align. And then that person, independent of the group who's checked them, would sign them and they would be presented at the AGM. So banking, the biggest failure is in that top bullet point. When people leave the parent council or are going to leave the parent council, prepare ahead for getting the new signatories on. One of my colleagues who's on a parent council told me today that it has taken about 14 months to get signatures changed at the bank, and they've actually co-opted on an ex-member of the parent council so that they can actually be there to help with the banking until the signatories are all altered. What tends to happen is that parents leave primary school, the children move to high school, they disappear, there's no parent council in place, and then somebody goes to try to access the account and they can't find the signatories. And we're doing all sorts of searches through secondary schools, which are really quite unnecessary because everybody's busy. But we need to have better planning for signatures changing on parent councils, and get that sorted out as soon as you can. If you can't get the signatures changed in time, I would suggest keeping a very small amount of money in the account, a few pounds to keep it open, and move any funding into the school fund. Ask the head teacher if it can be lodged in the school fund until the new account's established. So ways to avoid money getting stuck in accounts that then nobody can get into. I've already covered the bit about don't be left to count cash on your own, because then no accusations can be levelled. It's just, if I was doing it, I would want somebody to check that. You can see there that parent council transactions through a personal account are not covered by Connect's insurance. No parent should really be paying for things through their own bank account. There's you know, there's the account of the parent council, and that's what should pay for things. So maybe the treasurer has to go to the bank to get cash for somebody, or they may have to do a, you know, if somebody has bought something, do a bank transfer to them, but write it all down, because if you're paying money into somebody's personal account, so avoid where possible. I know that there are anomalies, but just make sure that the person gets reimbursed as soon as possible, so that nothing can go wrong. So you can see there that insurance covers you for up to 3 days before the money's banked, but I would say get it in the bank straight away. And then you've got those 2 signatories or 2 people confirming online payments. It's always good to be vigilant around that. So making sure that, you know, if you've not got a joint treasurer, that somebody else is actually witnessing what you're doing with the online. And if you're writing checks, 2 people to sign them, or 2 people to at least authorise the payments. I've already mentioned being vigilant around cybersecurity. So if you're logging on at a parent council meeting and you're up on the big screen in the school, make sure that the password isn't visible. So only the people that need to have that password actually have it. Checks are becoming a bit of a thing of the past, but if you were still operating with a checkbook, then don't hand over blank or incomplete signed checks, because that's another recipe for disaster. So managing the finances is good practice. There is a checklist that Connect provide about, you know, good money management as well, and you can go through and red, amber, green that document. But here's the main points. You want to update monthly by the treasurer and at least one other signatory, and that's why 2 people sharing that role is good. The accounts can be produced in several ways. We don't dictate how you do that. You don't need to use an Excel spreadsheet, because Excel spreadsheets are actually quite difficult to set up, or at least I found them difficult to do. A simple in and out book, a folder to store the receipts, you know, something to share store the bank receipts. But however you do it, just make sure, you know, that you do it. It can be very, very simple. But the problems arise when nobody does it and there's money floating about all over the place, and it's in folks' houses and folk are banking it and not telling anybody, and it just all becomes a bit of a muddle. So my great saying is, whenever there's problems in a parent council, it tends to be more of a muddle than a fiddle. But whatever method you choose, you need to have that system, and please pass it on to your future treasurers. And those accounts should always be available to anybody who asks to see them. So I might be coming and asking to see the accounts, but parents and carers in the school could come and ask to see those accounts at any time, because often they're putting their hand in their pocket and giving donations. So make sure that they are always up to date, and you need to hold those financial records for 7 years, as all organisations do. If you do that, you won't go wrong. The annual accounts and AGM, so once a year, it's a legal requirement that the treasurer gets the accounts audited or checked, you know, rather than using that audited word, which does sound very accountancy based. Just having those independently checked, and then producing a set. And there's templates that were provided you for an AGM report, and also how to produce a good AGM financial summary. So get that signed off. So you can see there, just no relatives or next door neighbours doing it. And they are part of the Treasurer's report to the Parent Forum at the AGM. And there's the links. So any other information you need, you know, there's lots on the YouTube channel, but these links and the slides will take you to the documents, and you'll see how simple it can actually be. Simple but effective. The problems arise when people don't do it. So if you follow all those steps, hopefully things won't go too badly wrong.
Thanks, Catherine. I'm going to move on to licenses and fundraising now. And just a wee reminder that the link to the slides in any of our webinars, you will usually find in the YouTube description. You'll be able to access the slides. And as Catherine has said, you'll see the slightly green coloured links throughout the slides. Then that takes you on to further information. So licenses and fundraising are extremely important when it comes to parent council. So a top tip is to make sure that you're fundraising for a specific reason and not just to top up the coffers or to raise more than last year. I don't know about you as a parent, but certainly me, if I'm going to be given to my parent council, I want to know where that money's going, and I want to make sure that it's going to benefit not only my child, but the other children within the school. So it's really important that you decide what you're going to fundraise for and make sure that you're transparent about that and you let people know where that money is going. So events like some of the ones that are going to come up in the list below, these ones don't require a licence, and we wouldn't advise them to be held within the school. So that's things like race nights, cheese and wines, maybe a prize quiz. That's particularly because holding them in the school is probably not the most appropriate venue for holding them. Because certainly you're bringing in alcohol and things, but they don't require a licence if you're holding them in a venue out with the school. However, if you are holding an event in with the school or in a venue that isn't already licensed, like a bar or a restaurant, then a license would be required for alcohol at events, unless you're putting it as a bring your own bottle. So if you've got a bar at your event, you'll require an occasional licence and a personal licence, and you can get that from Glasgow City Council. So again, there's a link at the bottom of this slide, and that'll talk you through what licences it's for and what you need to fill out for that. But in terms of fundraising, though, in general, activities like 100 clubs or bonus balls, they don't require a licence. However, it must only be parents and carers from the school or the school staff participating, not the wider community. And that goes for the same if you're running it on Facebook and it's opened up as a whole kind of community effort, then you would require a licence for that. But if it's on your Facebook and it's a closed Facebook page where you know it's only the parents and carers from your school or the school staff, then that's when you don't require a licence. So just remember the difference in that. All that information can be clarified on the Gambling Commission website. So again, there's another interactive link there for you to access. Now, inflatables, we know that these are really popular with parent councils and PTAs. But unfortunately, over the years, there has been so many horrific stories of accidents happening. The other thing with inflatables that you need to remember is the insurance and the liability insurance. Now, I'm sure there are plenty of reputable traders out there that allow you to hire out inflatables, but unless you are 110% sure that their insurance covers what you need it for, then I just wouldn't touch it. Because if anything happens, it's you as a parent council that could become liable for that if the retailer or the service provider doesn't have the adequate insurance in place. And really, do you want that reputation on your parent council or on your school if something were to happen to a child on these? We know they're a lot of fun and that kids love them, but just so much can go wrong if it's not done in the correct way and if it's not fully covered. But just for information purposes anyway, inflatables do have a lot of legislation that's required for them to operate, and it's the responsibility of the company that you use to have the correct public liability insurance. So you'll see here it says 10 million required or 5 million required for sole traders. So the 10 million will be for like a company, 5 million for sole traders. And check that the company has got all the guidance and legislation required, because many say that they have and in reality they don't, and then that's when it will fall back on yourself as a parent council. So just make sure if you are going to go ahead with this and go against our advice that we would strongly advise you avoid, and it's the same with party buses and limos, make sure you're reading that small print and that all the paperwork is in place, because you really don't want something bad to happen and then it falls back on you as a parent council and you're just trying to do a good thing for the pupils. So here's some more links that you'll find helpful. So the 100 clubs, private society lotteries, the occasional licenses, which were mentioned, and the personal licenses. These all link through to this information that you need. So just remember, if you're going to be doing any of these fundraising activities, Just make sure you're going in, you're reading through all the information, and that you're well prepared so that nothing comes back on you as a parent council, particularly when you're just trying to do a good thing and raise some money for your school. So in terms of fundraising, parent councils have a financial responsibility for both raising and spending the money that they fundraise. So don't fundraise and hold on to the money so that you can say you've got X amount in your bank account. That's no good to MD. The money that is raised is on the understanding that it will be spent to benefit children. So again, it's just about being transparent. Don't be raising money for items that would be a nice to have in the school. Like, make sure that you're raising money for stuff or items that the school and the pupils actually need and will benefit from. Because again, certainly as a parent, I would not like to be donating to a parent council's fundraising efforts if I don't entirely know where the money's going and I don't know that the school need it to benefit them, because there would just be no point in your fundraising otherwise. Parent councils also have a duty to report back to all parents on how it's been spent. Catherine's already covered some of that in terms of like your AGM and your financial reporting, and that's where we would expect you to kind of report back. We would also probably, it would be best practice to be reporting back either through a newsletter or social media. So say you're fundraising for some outdoor equipment, outdoor play equipment for your school. Once you've purchased that equipment, I would say it would be best practice for you to take some photos of the kids enjoying it with the permission, obviously, of the school, and post that in the newsletter or on social media. And again, it just means that parents and carers know that their money's going to a good cause, and they're more likely to donate when you're fundraising again, because if you can see the positive impact that that money's had on the school community, then when it comes to the next round of fundraising, you're more likely to put your hand in your pocket and donate something because you've seen the impact of it. So in terms of donations to the school, any particularly any monetary donations that you're going to make, any decisions about spending that are entirely made by the parent council. However, they should be done in consultation with the school or the head teacher and recorded in the minutes at the parent council meeting. So whilst head teachers can influence your decision and maybe give you some suggestions, the end decision is entirely for the parent council to make. But then there's no point you as a parent council making a decision that goes against the wishes of the school or the pupils or the head teacher, because that's just going to kind of break down your relationship. So we make sure that at a parent council meeting, it's well discussed. Maybe even want to survey the parents before you start fundraising what they feel the school needs. Ask the pupils. There'll be a pupil parliament. You could maybe ask them for some input before you even start fundraising so that you know exactly what you're fundraising for. All donations from the parent council to the school need to be recorded. So again, this is something that I'm sure Catherine will say she hears of a lot, where fundraising will be set up and the money goes directly into a school bank account. Now, I can see why parent councils might want to take that shortcut. However, it becomes quite difficult then to keep track of how much money you've fundraised to be able to report back at your AGM or in your newsletter. So best practice really should be that whatever money you have fundraised, it's banked and it's put into the parent council bank account so that we can see that money coming in. And then you make your donation, whether that's through cheque or a bank transfer, whatever way your bank is set up. And it just shows you then that paper trail where you've collected those donations in. It's clearly came to the parent council, and then we can clearly see that it is going out and it's being paid to the school. And the same goes with like your expenses that I won't go over again, but Catherine's kind of touched on that make sure that the money's always coming through your parent council account and that there's a clear audit trail. So the parent council should buy things that the school actually wants, which is helpful. There's no point in buying a whole bunch of school wellies if they don't need them. So again, it goes back to that consultation, and make sure you're consulting with the parents and the pupils, because there might be different views there. The parents might think the school needs one thing, pupils actually feel it's another, and then it's entirely down to you as a parent council to decide where your money's best spent. The school's also accountable for spending money gifted from the parent council. So again, As a parent council, what we would probably be expecting you to do in your meetings when you agree to, say, donate money to a school prom, for example, we would be expecting you to follow up with the school at the next meeting. Like, how did the prom go? What was the money spent on? Ideally, is there any photos that you can share? Because then you can pass that information then on to your parents and carers as well. And it's just really about being entirely transparent what that money's being spent on by the school and the parent council. And the school should publicise all financial support from the parent council. So again, I would like to hope that most schools are doing this and putting out a bit of a shout out and a thank you to the parent council for their donation. But if they're not, and if it's just a case of it slipped their mind, give them a wee nudge, because again, it's good for you as a parent council to be seen to be so active within your school. Because if you've raised hundreds of pounds of fundraising, then you want people to know where that money all went. So another way of being able to fundraise is area partnership budgets. So these are available throughout Glasgow. There's different areas within Glasgow, and all the information is on Glasgow City Council's website. So these budgets are mainly used to provide grants to local community and voluntary organisations, which is parent councils and PTAs, to provide services that will help achieve the area partnership's local priorities and Glasgow City Council's objectives. So generally what these grants are for big ticket items. So if you want to refurbish your school playground, or if you want to hold a certain event for, say, a family wellbeing event or something in your school, it's generally something where it's going to cost you a lot of money to either put on or purchase, and you as a parent council would just really struggle to fundraise that. The application will ask you to detail like what's the money going to be spent on, what's the impact on it. All the information is on the website. As you can see, this is a wee screenshot of all the documents that are on there, and it gives you some guidance about applying. You can also apply for bus hire. So if it's a trip that you're going on, we know buses are expensive. You can apply to the area partnership budget for your bus hire. So if you go onto the website through this link, you'll see all the information on there, including the application form. And if you have any questions that you're really struggling with and that you can't really get your head around, either contact myself or Catherine, and we'll be able to put you in touch with someone from the area partnership. Actually, I think we've got email addresses on the document that I'm going to show next. But if not, feel free to contact us and we can pass you over to someone if you've got more detailed questions that are not being answered on the website. Hopefully, though, this document covers any questions you do have. So we worked with the area partnership team, I think it was about a year ago, to come up with some of the frequent questions that we're asked a lot about area partnership budgets. And it's maybe just something that's not fully explained on the website. There's some questions in there about what you can spend it on, how much you can apply for, how often you apply for it. So hopefully, if you're not getting the answers on the Glasgow City Council website, you'll find more here, and it should cover everything. But at that point, if you are really stumped and you're not quite sure what you're doing, then either reach out to someone at Area Partnership Budget through their contact details on the website, or myself or Catherine, and we'll put you on to someone. But it should all be quite straightforward. So subtle support for families from the Parent Council. This is something that we've seen increase over the last few years, and it's been lovely to see, because parent councils are obviously now becoming a bit more conscious about their school community, that their role is not just about fundraising for good stuff for the school, that they can play a vital role within their community, and also being a wee bit more mindful of families within the school community might be in a bit more of a vulnerable position than themselves. So we've seen many parent councils want to set up fundraising activities to raise money for, say, grocery vouchers, or they'll maybe run their own food bank within the school or clothing bank. Just all these little things that try and ease the financial pressures for families. But what the advice we would give you, first of all, is discuss it with the school, because what you might find is the school are maybe doing their own thing already. And so if you go in there and start trying to set up like a clothing bank or getting baby food in for families, if the school's already doing that, it seems a bit counterproductive for you to start doing that yourself. The other thing as well is that the school will have the information about the families that are most in need. That information won't be shared with you because of GDPR legislation. So you might not actually be reaching the families that need your help the most. And it would work better if you partnered up with the school to see how you could support whatever they're already doing, or if you want to set up something with the support of the school. So one of the things that might actually work out easier for you to do as a parent council is to maybe agree a set amount that you would donate to the school for emergency supplies, because we know that some schools provide small food banks or pantries. Some of them have baby supplies for family with younger kids. Some of them, like I say, might have a school clothing bank, or they might have a toy bank. So rather than you as a parent council going out and purchasing items that the school might not necessarily need, it might be easier in one of your parent council meetings to discuss with the school. And if there is a certain amount of money that you could donate for the school to purchase what they need to support the families, that might be a better way to go about it. It will be less labour intensive for you as volunteers, and it makes sure that the school is getting what they need. One bit of advice I would say about any commitment that you are going to do about this is make sure you're agreeing on an amount of money that's sustainable, because what you don't want to do is overcommit yourself, and you might find halfway throughout the school year that you're struggling to fundraise for items for the pupils because you've donated too much of your money to supporting families through the wider school community. So just make sure that you're kind of looking at what you think you're going to fundraise throughout the year, and you're committing to a sustainable amount if you do something like this. Another suggestion might be that you want to buy shopping vouchers and give them to the school in small increments. And then it means if there is ever a family in need, if the school's maybe doing some welfare checks or anything, or they hear through the parent when they're in the school that they're going through a hard time and struggling, then the school could offer that shopping voucher. Again, just be careful. I know in the last slide we've spoke about making sure that you publicise what you spend your money on. This is where you would need to be slightly sensitive with that. So all you'd probably be saying in your newsletter is that you continue to support the school for the health and well-being of the families, of your school families. It would be something quite generic and vague like that, and maybe the school could help you craft something, because we obviously don't want to stigmatise any families, and we certainly don't want to expose any families if they've had to access this support. And that bottom one, no identifying information of the families should be passed on to the parent council. So don't go looking for it, because I would imagine the school won't give you it. And also just put yourself in the shoes of the families that are asking for this support. I'm sure you probably wouldn't like your business out there. So just be mindful that this can be a delicate situation. And it's maybe something that you want to avoid entirely. But if it is something you're passionate about and you want to support your school, then try and keep these tips in mind. So fundraising platforms, I wanted to just touch on this because what you've probably noticed over the last couple of years as well is that fundraising for parent councils is becoming more and more difficult to do. The financial pressures that families have been facing in the recent years, that obviously has a knock-on effect of your fundraising as well. And particularly if you're only doing fundraising within your school, there's only so much families can give. So something to just be mindful of, particularly around the cost of the school day. Don't be asking your school families for money time and time and time again, because they're feeling the pinch just as much as everybody else, and they can't keep putting their hands in their pockets. But a couple, an alternative that even my own school parent council has done, and I certainly am a champion about, is trying to use a fundraising platform, because sometimes when you use any of these platforms, you're opening up that fundraising to the wider community, and you're taking the pressure off your school families constantly having to put their hands in their pockets. It means that aunties and uncles, grands, local businesses could maybe donate. And the easiest way to do that is by setting up one of the fundraising platforms like a GoFundMe or a Just Giving page or a Virgin Money page. Now, there's none of these that I would kind of recommend over the other. What you would need to do is go into some of these platforms and just check the charges that they take, because most of them will take a small fee for hosting your fundraising. The other one to consider as well is, now that all of our schools have got parent pay in place, parent pay, it's quite difficult to say, also has a, if I've got it right, a shop function within it, and you can use that area for fundraising as well. Your schools should be aware of being able to do this, because many of the schools are using it if they're doing raffle tickets or anything, because most schools don't take cash in anymore. So they would always expect you to pay through parent pay. But again, if you're not sure how to do that, get in touch with us and we can certainly get further information to share with you, or we can get somebody to talk you through how you would set that up. Now, the beauty of doing it this way is, certainly when you get into secondary school parent councils, you'll notice that parents don't want to buy what their kids made as much as they did in primary school. So in primary school, you have almost an endless list of ideas for fundraising, between Christmas cards, tea towels, Christmas baubles, Easter eggs, artwork, key rings. Like, I mean, there's a million ideas that primary parent councils do where the kids get involved and they make items and the parents can purchase them, and it goes towards fundraising. Certainly in my experience, when you get to secondary school, you've done all that. You don't really want to be going through it all again. You're just quite happy to give money to the school for what they need. You are not really expecting much in return. So a good thing, a good way of fundraising that certainly my school has, my school parent council has used, and many other parent councils, is by just setting up one of these fundraising platforms. You're very specific on what you're raising money for. So, for example, at my parent council, we were raising money for a fun day for the entire school. So it's towards the school holidays in the summer. The school has a fun week, and they do a different year group for each day. And they invite things like, they've got a candy floss machine that comes in, they've got a burger van that turns up, they have the police bring the big vans round, they've got race games on, they've got computer games, I think they have sometimes like a pop-up cinema, all sorts of stuff for this fun week. And as a parent council, we decided, right, we would like to donate to your fun week. And we set up the fundraising platform. We were just very clear in the description, this is to go towards all pupils of the school for this fun week. And we shared that for a couple of months. And that's now a couple of times that we've done it, and we've raised, I think the first time we raised over £1,000, the second time it was almost 1,000. And it's a very easy way of being able to fundraise, again, without that whole labour intensive of having to go out and get prizes or sell raffle tickets. It's just sharing a link. You get the school to share the link, you share it through your own social media. And like I said, the extended family, extended community then can donate as well. And it's a really easy way to raise quite a substantial amount of money. Now, the one thing to note though, if you are going to go down this route, is that when you're setting up the platform, make sure that you're connected to the parent council of the school bank account. Do not connect any of these platforms to a personal bank account. because you don't want to put yourself in that position where you could be questioned about your motives for setting this up. And again, it goes back to that audit trail. You want to make sure that we can see that money coming into the account, and then we can see you transferring it back out to the school. So ideally, you want to connect it to your parent council account so that you've got that audit trail. And it says there, Just Giving requires you to connect it to a personal account, so that might be best to avoid. So just go through all these platforms and check all the information within it, that it's fit for purpose for what you want to do. So one handy thing that we've created for you as well is that a fundraising platform statement should be completed and a copy retained for your records. And this statement just basically says that you have set this fundraising platform up in your parent council's name, is connected to your parent council bank account. You sign it and date it, and you keep that stored. And it just means if you are ever questioned around the fundraising of it, you've got a record there, and it's just that continuous paper trail. So again, there's a link to the bottom of the screen for that. Catherine's already mentioned a few resources from connect.scot. So as parent councils in Glasgow, as part of the membership of Connect, we all have access to Connect Scots resources. So all you do is you go onto their website. If you're not already registered with them, so that you can just sign straight in, you can register with them. You just add your name, your school name, a couple more details. It takes a few minutes to kind of register and check its records, and then you get access, and that's you. You can access that site at any time, and it means that you can get access to even more resources. So obviously this training session is very specific to Glasgow, and we give you a lot more detail. But in terms of things like checklists, additional money tips, you've got spreadsheet samples there. There's a whole raft of further resources on that Connect site as well. So this one is a Money Matters pack, and it has a lots more stuff in there that you'll probably find useful in terms of managing your money for your parent council. So this is some advice that we have also received from what we would probably call procurement services in education in Glasgow City Council. Their official name is Property and Consultancy Services. But basically, these are the folk that if you want to make any sort of change to the fabrication of your school, so if you want to put in new play equipment in the playground, or if you wanted to get artwork on the side of the school building, these are the folk that you would need to speak to. So they've very kindly provided us with some helpful information. So this is advice regarding any alterations to the building fabric or the property grounds and the purchase of any external fixed equipment. So you really should get approval from the Property and Consultancy Services for any proposed building or grounds adaptations within the school curtilage, because you need to remember that the school itself, the actual building and the grounds, is not owned by the head teacher, and it's not owned by Education Services either. It's actually owned by the council. So if you want to change anything of the fabric or the outside grounds of that, then you need to get permission from the property owner, who is the council, and you would get that permission through Property and Consultancy Services. So while the parent council cannot be instructed on how to spend their money, which we've already mentioned, Property and Consultancy Services can advise you on what's the best supplier to use and to ensure that it's covered by insurance. So that's where the kind of procurement side of it comes in, because there will be a list of approved suppliers from this team. They will provide you with that list, and you can go in and look down it, and it just means that if you get anyone on that list to do any work or install any equipment, then it's covered by insurance should anything happen to it or any incidents happen. City Building Glasgow are the council's main contractor for most of the works, And there is an approved suppliers and installers list of outdoor equipment available via the Scotland Excel framework. So these have already been going through due diligence with the council, and it means that if anything goes wrong or a piece is faulty or anything needs repaired, then you've gone through that approved supplier. All proposed works should be discussed with your head teacher. Now, your head teacher should know this process as well, because they would need to follow the same process if they wanted to do anything. And if any further advice is required on how best to proceed, then your head teacher can contact the relevant officer for advice. So there's 3 email addresses there. Now, if you are going to contact Joe, Kat or Andrew or any of the team, that's fine. You can contact them to ask some questions, but make sure that you're copying your head teacher into the email, because whilst Joe, Kat and Andrew will happily give you some advice, you can't action anything without the head teacher knowing, because remember, your head teacher is basically like your building manager, and so you won't be able to go ahead and proceed with any works without your head teacher knowing. So just make sure that everyone is in the loop that should be. So these are some additional pieces of advice that have come from that team. Approved contractors must always be used. So if your school or parent council use a tradesperson who's not on the Glasgow City Council approved supplier list to install items like canopies, gazebos, or secure benches and tables, then there's no insurance cover for liability in the event of an accident. So if you have got a picnic table installed by your Uncle Jim, who's a joiner, and that picnic table is not installed properly and accurately, and then it falls over on a windy day and hits a kid or damages the grounds, then that will come back on you as a parent council, because it's not covered by any sort of liability insurance. So just bear that in mind. I know it's tempting to kind of get some free labour or to go with the cheapest option, but in the long term, it might end up costing you more. So if you've fundraised, say, for those picnic benches and then they all become damaged, that's your fundraising down the drain. The other thing to remember is if you want to paint any murals on the school walls to brighten up your school, then the general advice would be to get the murals painted onto boards that can be easily attached or removed from the building. And it just means then if things start to look a wee bit weather beaten, or say the school, we get a new head teacher in and she decides it needs to be a different theme, or for whatever reason a few years down the line it needs to be changed, it just makes things a lot easier to change over. The artist can be any one of your choice, but the installation would need to be carried out by an approved supplier for the same reasons we've already mentioned. And please note that some popular characters can be subject to copyright and should be checked for possible copyright infringement, because again, that can come back on you and get you into quite a lot of trouble. If you're looking to buy benches for your school, consider metal or resin benches over wood, because these are far more resilient, resistant to vandalism. And if benches need to be secured to the grounds, then again, you need to get an approved supplier to install them, but you can purchase them elsewhere. So that's the good news. It might cost you a wee bit more to get the approved supplier to install any items, but you can certainly look elsewhere if you want to buy cheaper materials. And wooden benches and tables must be secured to comply with Glasgow City Council fire insurance requirements. Again, we would advise before getting a cost from the approved supplier for installation to check with the team for the most suitable place for installation. They've got maps for these things that will tell you where pipes run or cables run, so you don't want to get an installer coming in and just ripping up the ground, and before you know it, they've burst a water pipe or something like that. So that's the end of this session. Hopefully it's been helpful. If you have any further questions that are not already covered, then feel free to get in touch with us and we'll do our best to help you. But that's quite an extensive slide pack, so we hope that it would cover everything that you need to know in terms of your parent council money matters.